Well, it's on. Good evening. Welcome to the Grand Rapids Art Museum. My name is Dana Fries Hansen. I'm the director and CEO, and we're so thrilled to have you here tonight, as well as our special panelists and discussion for the very important My Dearest Friends project that we are debuting here on the walls and the banners of the Grand Rapids Art Museum, as well as a number of other cultural organizations around the city. So I was asked to keep my remarks brief. I'm really happy about this. I'm excited, but you're not here to hear me talk. So I'm glad to have you welcome in a minute, and I'll give all their names, and then when they come out, you can clap for them. The artist Oakley Thiele, DisArt co-directors Chris Smith and Jill Vinn, and Graham Chief Curator Ron Platt. The discussion will be moderated by Dr. Elizabeth Van Aragon. Afterwards, we encourage you to ask the group questions, so there'll be time for that. Also, DisArt recommends that we have a casual space, so feel free to move around and be comfortable. It's a come-and-go environment, so there are chairs and videos out in the lobby if you'd prefer that. So enjoy the experience, enjoy the discussion, and thank you so much for coming tonight, and please help us spread the word about this wonderful project.
We're just going to let him go.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi. Good, how are you?
Shh, everybody be quiet.
We were supposed to have
So
music
quiet, yeah.
as we came in.
Fog machine.
We were dreaming of what could happen.
Yeah, lasers. Lasers.
You think we're joking? We did have this conversation, for real.
Well, good evening, everyone. Is this a good volume? We were joking that I'm using the handheld. They have the clip-ons, but...
Oh, God, it's loud. Oh, my God.
See, it is a good volume.
Oakley, I think you might be mic'd. Just so you know.
Dana said it's a come-and-go atmosphere. So
Oh, that's
maybe
right.
We're not that casual, okay?
That's right.
As you can see, we're not that serious. But we so appreciate everyone being here, and I understand this is also live streamed as a Zoom event. Is that correct?
Facebook Live.
Facebook Live, sorry. This is a Facebook Live event, so hello, everyone
Hello,
who's
Facebook.
participating in whatever location we're in. We'll talk in a little bit about how this was a project born in social media. So we love our social media following, and we're so glad you're with us as well tonight. So yes, I'm Elizabeth Van Aragon, and I have at different times worked with DisArt, but not recently, so I was really honored to be asked to participate in this discussion. And I have a few questions I'm going to use my iPad to refer to as we talk with Oakley, Chris, Jill, and Ron. Were there any announcements you wanted me to make, you guys?
I don't think so.
No, okay, Dana took care of all that, good. So let's just get right into it. Hopefully you've had a chance to take the tour and to experience the work outside, and we also hope you've had a chance to experience the work in its original context online, and that's part of what, of course, we're going to get into. So let's start first, Oakley and Jill and Chris. We want to talk a little bit about My Dearest Friends project and how this project came about. How did My Dearest Friends come into existence? It's really a collaboration between an artist, you, Oakley, and a disability arts organization dedicated to cultural production and disability culture. So can you talk a little bit about how it came into existence?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Lisa, for that. That's a good first question. So we, thank you all for being here too, by the way, this is really great. As the pandemic hit and all of our lives changed very quickly, Jill and I had spent some time thinking, well, what do we do now? We're a production company that makes public events happen. And so when that was changed, we thought, okay, what's next? But what we began to think about, more importantly, thankfully, is what our community needed. And I think that was something that I think for all of us was really important to witness disability stories not being told on the news. And in fact, right, Oakley, we would talk about, look, disabled people and chronically ill people were being talked about as a buffer to this pandemic, and that we would feel the brunt of it the most. And so we wanted to have a platform where disabled people could actually tell their own stories. And that was a really big deal. But it really came from your poem, Oakley.
Yeah.
Want to talk about that?
Yeah. As the pandemic hit, I was really overwhelmed with, as Chris was saying, I was hearing friends and family, say, it's okay, only the chronically ill and disabled will die from this, which was incredibly upsetting because I'm disabled. But I was in my studio alone trying to sort of process what was happening. It was, my town had gone into this lockdown, no one was leaving their houses. And so I wrote this poem alone in my studio with Coco. And it started off with the phrase, "my dearest friends," and it was just my way of addressing the disability community and sort of begging the world not to forget what happened during COVID, but also vowing to all of my disabled people that I would fight for a more accessible world at this time, and then also at the end of COVID. So I published that on Instagram, and I had already been in conversation with DisArt a little bit beforehand. I was aware of DisArt, and so they reached out.
Aware of us. You were part of an exhibition with us.
She was
We knew you.
Yeah.
And
I knew you.
Yeah, we had gotten to know Oakley actually in 2019 prior as part of our Voices exhibition that was at Tanglefoot, Critical Infrastructure. And then through these interviews that we were doing, we got to, hey, Oakley, show us your art. And we were blown away by her art. And if you haven't seen the rest of the work that Oakley does beyond what she's done for My Dearest Friends project, I'd look her up, I'd Google her. 'Cause she's someone to follow. But so we had known Oakley and had been following, and Chris, you saw her Instagram post and said, wow, this is exactly what we've been talking about. We've got to talk to Oakley and just see what we can dream up. We had no intentions of what, or ideas of what we could do, except to start a conversation with each other.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So that was March 2020.
Yeah.
At what point could you see that this wasn't just a good idea to you three, but that this would be a project that would grow, that would have meaning to the disability community that you were talking about, Oakley, and that it would fit with DisArt's cultural mission?
Hey, Oakley, did you start, just to help answer that question, did you start this on your Instagram initially, or did we right away start on My Dearest Friends?
We right away started on Dearest Friends.
Yeah.
And then how, do you recall how it got attention over the time?
We didn't do anything formal.
We didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like that's what's so amazing. We didn't put money into advertising. We didn't do anything. This just grew. I think it was probably your own Instagram or ours that then said, hey, this is happening.
We posted a poem and we asked for the disability community to send in their own stories, and they showed up. And we received, I think we have over 400 submissions so far from across the globe, which is amazing.
Yeah. And I think what happens with this is that the stories started coming out, Oakley's illustrations started coming out, and I think people really felt it as an invitation. Disabled people, if you read some of the stories that have been sent in, and if you look at the art, you can see that there is there's a bit of it's not only confessional, right, but it's very honest, and it's very it's a wide range of human emotion, right? It's not all sorrow, it's not all sadness. But there was a lot of that in our community. It was a rough, really terrible year for us. And so I think for for the reason it got so big is hopefully is that people were feeling like they belonged somewhere, like they were able to say, okay, people are listening, and so, yeah.
Yeah, we've always considered it a call and response.
Yeah.
And it became very personal for a lot of people. I mean, Oakley's talked about with us over the last year and a half of text, or Instagram messages and phone calls and this personal connection that you've made with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Over the last year and a half.
That was something I was not expecting at all, but I think that was the moment I realized the project was definitely much bigger than the three of us. But yeah, I had conversations with, a nurse who just graduated and was like on the front lines in New York City. I had conversations with mothers who'd lost their kids due to COVID, and it was like these really personal connections that were happening because of this Instagram, which was really cool.
Well, and we'll keep talking about this, but of course the project now is continuing. It wasn't just the pandemic, but it's really about disability culture and that community. But Ron, how did the Gram become involved with My Dearest Friends, and how did we end up here from the social feed to the museum?
We've had a long and really terrific relationship with DisArt, and we've been in touch for several years. We've done some smaller projects with them, but I think we've always felt as an organization that we wanted to find a project where we could really sort of dig in and collaborate meaningfully on something. And so they came to me, and with this project, we didn't have anything set for ArtPrize this year. And it was pretty much immediately evident that this is something that would work really well in a public setting, and that we could provide that setting. Just in terms of the piece's concept, it's very clear, and it communicates very clearly and directly, and yet there's kind of a poetry to it also, which I think is really beautiful. There's an empathy to it. I mean, it's not often you run across an art project that has the word Dearest in the title, And I think that was important, that it evolved out of a question that somebody was seeking an answer to within their community, and that then could become something that spoke to like the real spectrum of that community, and that we didn't have to do a lot, honestly, to sort of provide the forum for that.
That's right. It was built in. Well, one of the things that you just alluded to, that sense of empathy, relates really well to the next part of the question, and that is that unlike sort of traditional work of art where the artist makes it and then brings it to the museum and the museum shows it, and those two separate entities come together, this has really been a lot about collaboration, it seems to me. And so I would love to hear you all talk about how collaboration has been a part of your practice, Oakley, and then how collaboration is a part of your cultural mission, Jill and Chris, and then how you've been drawn into this collaboration, you and your team, Ron. So maybe do you want to start, Oakley, and then Jill and Chris, and then Ron?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an artist and a storyteller, and so within my own personal practice, I talk about my relationship with Coco a lot. I talk about being a disabled queer female, like, in the world. And so, how do I put it? I lost my thought. Oh, no. Hold on. Okay. This is my first panel event, guys, so.
Let me just say that round of applause is very well timed. Here's someone who's in her second year of art school, and she has a museum exhibition. I mean, this is really extraordinary.
But as a storyteller, of course my story is very important, but every disabled person's story is important. And so I do have that platform when I make my own works, but I wanted to make sure that I'm also, telling the stories of other disabled people and collaborating with them to sort of build a platform for not only myself, but also the entire community. So that's, got that.
No. Go ahead.
If something else comes back to you, just spit it out. That's how we work. For those of you in this room, many of you collaborated with us since the beginning. I mean, we started on this stage. In 2015, we had the DisArt Festival, and the Graham was our stage to tell the world about that. But that started because we had a very close relationship with Kendall College of Art and Design of Ferris State University, who still are. I mean, there's people from KCAD here in the audience, and we're all about building relationships and collaborations, and we can go on, but every project and every piece of work or everything we've done has been within the context of a relationship with another group of people. It's just, I don't know, it's just the way we've always done things. And so it's been large organizations like the Graham or Meyer Gardens or KCAD, but also individuals, artists. And we come together, and when we came together, we're not kidding, we had no idea what we were going to create. We just came together and said, we know we like each other. That's how with Graham. We know we like each other. We're going to wait until we have the best time for that to happen. And we're very patient because we think relationships and processes. I mean, we had multiple conversations. I remember pre-COVID in the restaurant, and where we're like,
what are we going to do?
What are we going to do? And we decided to do nothing.
Yeah.
And then we wait. And then we wait, and we build relationships, and we understand all the partners that we work with, and all the individuals that we work with. We know that we have a shared value system about how we see the world, and so that's at the core of everything we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important for us always to think about the culture of disability and what that has given us as an organization as well. And for the culture of disability, interdependence is the lifeblood. It's the lifeblood of our daily lives. I exist because of all the people that are on the stage with me and people who are in the audience. And so that sense of dialogical love and support and interdependence is something that we try to let it be a guiding principle, and so far it's worked, right? Yeah.
Well, and our guiding principle is to lift each other up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I don't know if there's some people from SiteLab, and I didn't mention that, but SiteLab, Paul Lamenta, Ted Lott. I mean, we're always trying to lift each other up for these common goals, and we each do it differently, but we all do it collectively. I see a question in the back.
What was the most poignant story that Oakley heard that was the impetus of the entire project?
Let me just digress here, Todd. Another collaborator.
I love
Thank
it.
you for your question. We will take it just at the moment because it's such a good one. But otherwise, let's hold the questions from the audience until the end, okay? No. Thank you, Todd. Go ahead, Oakley. Do you want to? And then we'll come back. I want to hear Ron talk about collaboration, too. Go ahead.
The most impactful story?
The most poignant, he said. Yeah, impactful. Stayed with you most.
Oh, shoot.
Maybe we let you think. Well, Ron,
let me think.
and then we'll come back.
You think on that. We'll come back to that because
It's
that
so
is
hard,
a great
you're
That's a
question.
good
And
question.
how do you choose a favorite
Interdependence.
child, right? Yeah.
Interdependence happening right here.
Yeah, right. We
front
can
of all of
morph.
us,
We can
yeah.
collaborate. I'm not in control. I think one of the things that you were talking about, though, this sense of being patient, Jill, I mean, there's a terminology, and we won't get into all of the lexicon of disability culture right now, but one of the terms that we use is crip time in the community. That's an insider term, so if you're not familiar with it, it's okay. But what we mean by that is we move at the pace of our slowest community member. So we're not hustling anybody along. And so that works conceptually and actually. But we take our time. whether that means we're moving from one point to another in a tour around the museum, or whether we're actually figuring out the right timing of a project. Am I explaining that correctly?
Absolutely.
It's all about the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
So, Ron, what does collaboration mean to you in this context, collaborating with DisArt and in general in your work as a curator? That's a really important principle, right?
The idea of waiting until you get the right project, I think, is fundamental, and the idea that the project is beneficial to all parties, I think, is important, because I think collaborations, you want to sort of like build on them and not just do a one and done kind of thing, and so we as an organization had like a real level of comfort, deep respect, and an understanding that DisArt gets things done. And that when we began to talk about this project, we recognized how it was great for them, it's great for Oakley, and it's great for us. And we knew that we were going to be able to sort of, as an organization, to do it, to pull it off to the extent that it needed to be done to satisfy everybody. And I think the best collaborations really need to be mutually beneficial.
Absolutely.
And especially when you're in the same community, there's an opportunity to keep growing them. And then, to me, one of the most exciting things is looking out into the audience and seeing groups of people who may have not sort of been together before. And this sort of audience building, audience sharing, I think is it's so important to a community. That's something that this project is just beginning, since it's debuting tonight, to make happen.
Thanks. Oakley, have you had a chance to think about
Oakley,
that
we're
great
coming back to
question?
you.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, Todd, I can answer your question now.
So the question again was, what's the most poignant story that has been shared with you in the course of My Dearest Friends project? Great question.
Yeah, there was a point like mid-pandemic, I shouldn't say mid because the pandemic is still going on, but a few months ago, I had an individual reach out to the account, and they said that they're having to get their leg amputated. They don't have any support. They don't have any connection to the disability community. They don't know who to turn to, but they've been following this one account, and they were like hoping to, I don't know, it gave them some solace, some peace, and they were like, what do I do now? And I didn't know what to tell them, but just being able to have that connection for her was really important. Many people don't know this, but we talked a few times, and the individual, you'll see her on this giant banner, which is hand sewn, but the woman with the prosthetic leg was inspired
That's her.
By the conversation that I had with her. I just wanted her to, be able to see a museum, go to the museum and see someone that looks like her. That was so important to me. But also, I don't know, you'll see the promo video outside, but at the start of the pandemic, At the start of the pandemic, my health was in a different place than what it was now. I was able to walk, and then as the pandemic went on, I ended up needing a cane, and then now I'm obviously in a wheelchair. And so my health changed immensely during the pandemic, and being able to read stories from the community every single day made such a giant difference for me. It's the thing that helped me through it, for sure. So that every single one of them had a giant impact on me, for sure.
It's awesome.
Yeah, and I think actually this goes back to Ron's point about what makes the project compelling, that whether a person identifies as disabled or not, that feeling of isolation, that feeling of great fear of the unknown, that feeling that what you're experiencing is not fixed or stable,
Right.
but you're living in an unstable body, you're living in an unstable mind, That's something that many of us experienced and lived through, right? That's one of the markers of this common experience that we've had, and I think that's one of the things the project speaks to. And how do you find meaning in the midst of that uncertainty and discomfort? And while we may, in many cases, if we're non-disabled, you know, I call myself a temporarily able-bodied person, but you know, we have this sort of illusion that things are moving on, or that, you know, things are more stable again. But I think what you bring to mind is the sense that, no, that is just an illusion. Our bodies and our minds are not fixed or stable, and that's part of that, the sort of specter, right? And that's where some of the joy and humor that also comes out in My Dearest Friends is so important. Does that?
But that's what I love about the disability community, and becoming aware of it. And for us, it's having more and more people become aware of the disability community, because the entrance, like you're talking about, for this woman can be really harsh.
Yeah.
Into the disability community. And there's one of our satellite locations is Mary Free Bed at the entrance. We'll talk about satellite locations, but one of those is that COVID allowed for a gentle entry. I think this project allows for a gentle entry, or a realization, if you are disabled, that I have a place to belong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I'm living in a world where it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
And I can be who I am, and I just feel like it's an intro, it's an invitation, and it's awareness.
Yeah.
And considering just statistically, approximately 1 in 4 Americans lives with some form of disability, we're a much bigger community than many of the so-called non-disabled people realize, right? So that is really important to have that presence. That's not so scary. Well, I had another list of questions, and we've been wandering around here. So I think one of the things I'd like to talk about is a little bit of what we see as the artistic impact of the project, not just the political messaging, but the political messaging enters into that question. So, you know, this is a little art historical context maybe, but what we see happening in modern and contemporary art is this kind of continual navigation of images that were produced for a mass media context, who are produced for, you know, being seen simultaneously by a mass audience. It's certainly a big phenomenon or theme in modern and contemporary art, versus the sort of single, you know, individual, what Benjamin would call, right, this almost sacred aura of the individual unique image. And in your project, what we see happening is this really funny, it's not that a single unique image sort of made into a mass media context and that changes it, but instead these images that were made for a mass media context are now reproduced as sort of monumental single images for a museum context. And so this is this really interesting shift in meaning from this mass media form, this social media context, to the context of the museum. And I wondered, you know, how much did you think about what would happen to the kind of formal experience of the work of art when it's no longer on a little screen that someone's flipping through and liking or not liking, but also, you know, responding to in this kind of intimate way in a mass media community, right? Like this particular experience. How does the image change when it is blown up to 30 feet high and suddenly you're very aware of its lines, its composition in a different way? What did that mean for you, Oakley, in terms of, like, what is the value of changing context to the museum? And then maybe, did you think about, you know, anything that you might lose in changing context?
Yeah.
And then I would love to ask you about that same thing, Ron. Like, what does it mean to take this mass media form into the space of the museum, and this sort of political messaging into the space of the museum? So you first, Oakley.
Yeah, so, well, the way I made the images, both for the digital realm and also for Graham, was the exact same process. So I only use computer paper and a charcoal stick. That was really important to me because when this project started, we were in lockdown. No one was leaving their houses except for essential trips. And even though my sole income is from art, like getting art supplies was not essential at that time. So I had to find things that were within my home, which was a stack of computer paper and a charcoal stick. And so I would draw those images on a single computer paper, photograph it, import it, put it on Instagram. For Graham, it was still that one computer paper. And I don't think I thought too much about it being blown up on the museum, otherwise I would have like broken down. I couldn't handle that. So I just pretended, I'm gonna make this image and it's not gonna go anywhere and I'm not gonna look. But I think the major thing for me at least was, switching from the digital realm to the physical is accessibility and how that changes. Like when we're posting these images on Instagram, I was able to add the alt text and the image descriptions, and it was definitely much more accessible. And then when you bring it into, a physical space, you have to worry about, it's a much uncontrolled environment for sure. So we were trying to work through how do we do an audio tour and how do we add image descriptions and how do we make sure that the sidewalks are all, ready to go.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
That's another
tell
problem.
that story in a minute. Yeah.
And there are people who picked, we shared the image descriptions around the museum. We added boxes because some people benefit from having the image descriptions, whether we realize we benefit from it or not. And then there's the audio tour. So it's trying to get creative. I mean, that's all that we're always doing. We didn't know that Oakley was, in her mind, she needed to keep it small.
Right.
Because we kept seeing these large mock-ups. And we're like, not small.
The mock-ups are small on the computer, though,
Right,
too.
right,
I didn't talk about it.
But I would agree, but we're always trying to find the creative way. And we know there's going to continue to be better and better and better ways to exhibit in exhibition spaces. And it's interesting to, do this process and imagine how it might change processes in the museum. We don't know, right?
I think also the exciting thing was I'm looking at these photos on my phone, they're so tiny, and then I pulled up to the gram and they're massive. And
Pretty powerful. Yeah.
I mean, every time I go to an art museum, it's impossible to find a figure that looks like me, a portrait of someone in a wheelchair. And that was, that was exciting for me.
Can't miss the guy out there.
Yeah, the scale.
Ron, do you have anything you want to add to that idea of taking something from a mass media context where it was originally created for a certain kind of viewing experience, and then sort of what we gain, or potentially what's the risk of bringing that form into a new context on a really different aesthetic scale and in a different medium?
I never really thought about the mass media element, that kind of birthed it. To me, it was always very handmade and tactile, and the words are very personal. The handwriting, which I think is very ingenious, is just demonstrates a real personal touch, and then the drawings are all obviously sort of like rendered in a very clear and personal way. It's interesting to me. I was just thinking about it. It almost seems like the form that it's taken was inevitable, but I know that we went through different ideas.
A few of them, yeah.
For a while.
Yeah.
But it just seems so inevitable. One of the things that's really exciting, I think, for my colleagues and I, is the idea that we are sort of turning ourselves inside out here. People don't have to come in to the museum to see this project.
Right.
People don't even need to know that we're a museum to take in this project. I love that there's just like that really direct way that the project meets people where they are, and as they're sort of like moving through the city, and they just they don't have to go somewhere to see art.
Right.
It just sort of like comes into their everyday existence and into their consciousness in a way that I think is really interesting. And I think I just am so excited that we can be the platform, for that.
Yeah, well, you were right. The process, we worked with Oakley, we didn't know what we were going to do. We started talking with Ron, we didn't know exactly what we were going to do or what the format was going to be. We didn't know initially that it was
We
going
don't
to be
even know what
vinyl
we're
on
doing
window.
now.
I don't know what I'm doing, that's for sure.
But it was,
Yeah.
that's part of it, is going back to that mutual benefit and that collaboration, is that you helped us figure out how to take it from the digital to the physical.
And
in our
conceptually, it was so clear from the beginning that it was really evident that it could work
Yeah.
like this.
We just
It
needed
just,
to
we
figure the
just, you
logistics.
could just tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of, sort of the history of museums being this kind of white cube separate from the social world, we can see how that whole era since, the late 50s and 60s has really changed that, because museums have become so much, more aware of the museum itself as a medium, right? And have used that and have been receptive to artists thinking through how can we talk about what the space of the art world really means. And so one of the things that's, I think, very powerful about what you just said, you've, in some ways you're right, people don't have to come into the museum to experience the project, but now the museum is also a destination in a way that it, like you're saying, communities will come together, kind of like what happened last year in 2020 when those big, powerful museums, or murals rather, my M words, were on the outside of the museum, right? That it became transformed by that.
Yeah.
Jill and Chris, can you talk at all about that idea of disability culture and transformation? Like there is this, you've had this really strong sense as part of your cultural mission that that creative process of transformation, which is essential and unique to the artistic practice, is also really a big part of disabled life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the idea of the disabled, unstable body, which, is, again, a philosophical way to talk about disability, but the act of being disabled, one of our favorite artists, and we quote him often, is a guy named Neil Marcus. And Neil Marcus said, look, disability isn't some tragic life. Disability is an art form. It is an ingenious way of living. And so the act of creativity that you see on the walls here stems from an act of creativity that most disabled people have inherently, right? As we walk into a room or as we roll into a room, we are immediately scanning, looking for what we can do and what we can't do in that room, and figuring out the tactics, right, that we need to employ to be successful or to survive, right? And that's the essence of being disabled in the public square, right? And so what you're seeing on the walls of the museum here is a literal doppelganger, right, of that creative juice and creative spirit that we think is embedded in the disabled lifestyle. Absolutely, yeah.
I think that's great.
So I have one more question, and then if there are questions, further questions from the group, we'd love to hear those too. But Jill, you alluded to this. So one of the real acts of generosity that we see in this exhibition is that Graham is sharing My Dearest Friends, and Disart and Oakley are sharing My Dearest Friends with satellite locations. Do you want to mention anything about the satellite locations, Jill?
Yeah, so we started obviously talking with the Graham, and then we shared this project we have an arts working group. There's people in this room who are part of it. So arts organizations in Grand Rapids that we meet regularly throughout COVID and the pandemic, like very regularly. And we shared that we're doing this project with the Graham, and we started getting private chats to say, ooh, I'm interested. And one of those first was Maggie Lancaster, the director at the Children's Museum, and she said, hey, can we talk? I'm really interested in this. And so we started talking with Maggie and members of her board and team members and Ron and Dana and like, how do we do satellite? This is, this is a venue for ArtPrize. This is a venue. How do we spread the project beyond the walls? And so we just, again, we didn't know what we were doing. So we started talking and we started dreaming. And
well, I think what was really important too is that we wanted to get the voices of multiple types of disabled people. And so to talk to disabled kids, that's it. I mean, that's the dream. So these kids started writing these statements, and they'll kill you. I mean, they blow you away, right? And so it just seemed like a really wonderful opportunity.
In what way?
Well, I mean, they speak with. For me personally, it's seeing myself in them. As a 7-year-old who says, I hate when my parents push my wheelchair. Like, I know where I want to go. I don't need to be pushed, right? And I think, my folks never did that. But they're right here in the audience. But there is that.
And they knew you would never let them. No question.
Right.
We won't get into all that.
Right. But that demographic question was a really big thing, because then we wanted to also look at Mary Free Bed and look at the folks who live and learn to live at Mary Free Bed. And so we wanted to collect stories from them. And so it just seemed like an obvious, place to do that. And then again, Kendall was right with us right away and said, look, we have a mental health crisis going on right now in secondary and higher education, right? And so we said, okay, well, let's hear those stories and let's turn them into My Dearest Friends art at the campus. And so, by doing that, we spread, in one hand, we're spreading disability all over the city, which is what one of our goals is, but we're spreading our story, as well. And so really expanding the reach of that.
And for us, when you think about disability culture and where it typically exists, or disabled people typically exist, and now to have this opportunity to not only have conversations within an art institution and but now we're talking about working with children and families and having conversations there, and higher ed and students and who are going through processes of identity and understanding, and in a medical institution. For us, this is incredible. It's a gift that Grand Rapids gives us. The collaboration and the saying, yes, we believe in this work. We want to help this work get out there. We want to share it. We're willing to share the platform and expand it so that these conversations, which are really necessary and important, can happen in all different networks and connections.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's really powerful to us.
Thank you.
And a model, actually, we'll say, we do a lot of things that we want to model here. We want to take this project to other cities. So can you imagine other cities, how they may or may not have a similar connection across institutions and organizations and structures and systems, and how this can be a model for how to do things. So we love Grand Rapids for that purpose.
Absolutely.
Are there any questions from the group? And you're not mic'd, and I'm not going to try to run around to everyone, but if you
there is
will.
one out there.
There is one. Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I was going to say I'll repeat your question so our interpreter can share it, and so that for the folks joining us remotely, they'll be able to hear it as well.
I know I'm kind of an insider, but what the hell are these stickers for?
That might have been the question behind you, too.
That's right.
Good question.
It's a good
Todd.
question. So the stickers.
Picking that one off.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. We are always interested in engaging the community in any exhibition that we do. And what we're doing now with these stickers is that we are identifying for the next 3 weeks during ArtPrize, we are asking people in the city, disabled and non-disabled alike, to identify things in the city that are inaccessible. And you have 2 things that you can do to make that aware for other people and to let other people know that. The first thing you can do is you can get an app that we have.
It's actually not.
It's a web-based
It's web-based,
app.
so you don't have to download anything.
Right, right. Would you like to?
No, I just want to clarify that, because when you say get an app, it means, oh, I have to go to the app store, but no.
Right.
This is a
Right.
pilot. Again, we're piloting it in Grand Rapids.
Right.
So it's on the DisArt Now website. The QR code is, you can use your phone,
Yep.
zoom in, get the link, so it's so you don't have to go to an app, Chris.
Jill is apparently we don't need to get an app.
Chris,
Well,
so what do
I
you,
know I should, yeah.
so what do you
I
do with
fact-check
this? Go
him
back
all
to
time, don't worry.
Okay, so
So you get the sticker on your chair,
Right, so you
and
get-
where do we go from there?
right, yeah.
Sorry, tangent.
So the demand, it's called Demand Access, and it is a web-based app that you can get on your phone by scanning the QR codes on a lot of our information. And that asks you to identify a structural barrier, a cultural barrier, or a social barrier that is inaccessible, and that is, a difficult barrier, right, for people with disabilities. And so you take a photo of that, and you are asked to put a pin, right, a geotagged pin, right, on that. And when you do that, that pin will go to a map. And at the end of ArtPrize, we will be giving that map to the city of Grand Rapids as a way to say, here's what we all figured out, right? We took a look, right? And so the sticker that Todd handed there, and you all have one on your seat, and we have several for you. Don't put them in the gram, but the sticker is there for you to leave a reminder, a friendly reminder, and those are not, they're what do we call them? They're decals.
They're not actually stickers, but
Right.
stickering the city sounds cooler than decaling the city.
Right, that's right.
So
that's
they
right.
are decals. Now, this is a process. We have friends in our midst who were very uncomfortable
Yeah.
with the idea of stickers being in places because they leave residue. So we used the same concept. We contacted Fast Signs, who helped us with all the vinyl. Very huge
Yeah, they
sponsors.
deserve a round of applause.
Yeah, they are incredible.
They are absolutely,
Yeah.
really wonderful.
Who, by the way, when you work with them, become part of your team.
Yeah.
So fabulous. So we worked with them and said, hey, do you have something we can do that can peel on and off? And they're like, of course.
Yeah.
this is what we do. So we, instead of printing stickers, we printed decals. So I've been sticking this on and off my house for the last couple weeks, just to make sure. You will, if it's peeling, it's going to peel anything, right? That's just going to happen. But surfaces, it won't. But the idea is that we're not here to vandalize our city. We're here to share our knowledge and bring awareness to the inaccessibility that exists in our city. And so by leaving a sticker, you leave a trace behind where someone has been and said, this is inaccessible. I took a picture of it and tagged my steps at my house before I came here because it's inaccessible, right? That's a reality. It's awareness. So then when someone goes to that map and they say, steps are inaccessible to my private home, right? Doesn't mean I'm a terrible person.
Well,
it means I got to figure out how to make it better.
Right.
So we're here to all be part of a process to make our city better. And we need all of you. This is crowdsourced. We need all of you. And we have representatives from Disability Advocates of Kent County who have been doing this work. They have been identifying inaccessibility and talking to the city and making significant changes because of their work. We want to help amplify that effort that's been being made and use this artistic process to do that and engage disability advocates then in our project to help us do it during ArtPrize. But this is how we work together, right? We want to collaborate. We need all of you to help us identify. And you may not know.
Right. Yeah.
like what to tag,
Yeah.
but you can go and you can learn
Yeah.
by seeing what other people have done.
Yeah.
And I do think it's helpful if we
Yeah.
talk about what might someone tag.
Sure, yeah. And I want to say, too, that our partners making the program are here as well, Conduit Studios. And I would love if we could give them a round of applause. Because,
Oh, thank you.
yeah, John and his team, they never say no to us. We give them these ideas, and they say, well, all right, give me 10 minutes. You
Well,
know?
and there's another person. John is part of our team.
Yeah, part of our
If
family,
you don't
yeah.
know John, he's sitting right there. Yeah, he helps us dream.
Yeah.
He helps us think
Yeah.
bigger than we might otherwise, and
Right.
helps us navigate situations and problems and problem solve as part of, like, we can't do it without him. So thank you, John.
So look for sidewalks, look for any physical structures that are in the way or not level, right? We also talked, though, about social and cultural things, right? If you go into a space and you don't feel, and maybe as a disabled person you may know this feeling, but if you walk into a space and you immediately identify that you are the only disabled person there and something is off, right? That could be something that you tag, right? Where do you feel safe? Where don't you feel safe? When do you hear people talking about disabled people in positive ways or also negative ways, right? So again, the idea, it's a performance, right? We're performing the awareness of accessibility, right? And we're going to do that for the next 3 weeks, like we said. But the exciting thing about what John and his team has done is they have made this global. Okay, so this app, hopefully, this web-based app
Will hopefully be a downloadable app.
Right,
feature.
yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah, will hopefully go all around the world, and then the map will grow, right, with the app, right? And so, again, it's all connected to awareness, it's all connected to understanding that disability lived experience in a bit more touchy way, like you can feel it. Yeah.
And as businesses, we encourage you to tag businesses. We encourage you to tag places and cities and whatever you want that is inaccessible, because when people start talking about, oh, don't do this to my place, well, there's a lot that can be said from the disability community of, well, I shouldn't have to do this.
Right.
I shouldn't have to even say these things. I shouldn't have to point this out. This is a small inconvenience to have a sticker. It doesn't even compare to the lived experience of the inconvenience. Right? This is temporary. We've chosen stickers that are temporary. But the impact and the day-to-day impact of inaccessibility is not temporary. It's long-lasting. And we want it to change. And we need your help to do that. And so we're really excited about this aspect of the project, because it takes art and brings everybody into it for change.
I think also from the business standpoint as well, like Dearest Friends is here and prepared to support businesses and talk through, why did you guys get stickered, and let's figure out what's inaccessible within your organization and how can we change it.
Yeah, so we have a part, I've been tagged. So if you see these, it's been an I've been tagged, and we're planning, we have a webinar planned for October 4th, I think, where we just want people to come, and we can answer some questions and really have those conversations, because we believe that access is a process, that it takes time. And awareness is where we start, and we're all at different points in that awareness journey. But we just feel like you can finish my sentence.
I mean, well, we want people to stop fearing our community and become part of it. I mean, that's just the easiest way to say it. There's so much mystery that media and our culture creates about disability and disabled bodies, and what DisArt and my dearest friends are trying to do is say that we are a human group of people that will flourish if you let us, right? And so, I mean, that's really the message. And DisArt's mission has always been not to alienate people with that message, but to invite them in with that message. And so I think that's really where we're headed. Yeah.
Well, I think we're nearly at the 8 o'clock hour, so let me just conclude. First of all, thank you all for your generosity and your ideas. And thanks to the Graham. You know, sometimes in the history of political and social movements that have involved the arts, the civil rights, the Black civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, the women's movement, the gay rights movement, and including the disability rights movement, political activists will say to artists, well, that's great that you're making images, but wouldn't it be better to put down your charcoal stick and your paper and get out there and make the sidewalks more accessible? I mean, what is the place of art in the political movement? And I hope what you're seeing is that idea of collaboration and that spirit, as it has been through all of these rights movements, which have been a model for the disability rights movement, the arts have played that role of transforming perceptions, right, of bringing our attention in a different way, because the aesthetic is a unique part of human experience, and it changes the way we understand the world. So thank you for doing that, Oakley and Jill and Chris and Ron and everyone who has been a part of it here. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everybody.
And I think the event continues till 9. Am I right about that, Dana? So, you know.
Do you have a
Okay,
question?
great.
Oh, question, sorry. Yeah.
From the very
Yeah.
articulate to totally inarticulate herself on the left. And I'd like to know what, for example, her educational background is, and how you people came to be where you are, and if you have a confessed disability, when it started. So just like to get to know you a little bit. Second question is have you started an art line, or a clothing line with this person in the center here?
No, but we coordinated.
So maybe I'll field that first question. So I just, and I appreciate what you were asking. So you'd like to understand who we are, how we came to be at the point that we're at. But I would just like to qualify your description of our ASL interpreter as totally inarticulate. So you cannot hear what she is saying, but she is probably the most articulate member of this panel. So we thank you. Yeah. And that is certainly a part of disability culture, that we understand that in a kind of normative, able-bodied context, we assume speech and communication, the way I am articulating now, is what articulation is, right?
Yeah.
But it takes many forms, and that's part of the beauty of the community. I will say, why don't you wait, and you can ask each of us individually about our, educational backgrounds. I appreciate the question, but just in the interest of time.
In the interest of that, as we're talking about access,
Yeah.
one of the things that we didn't do was describe ourselves. So I
Okay.
think that would be nice.
Okay, maybe that's fair, yeah.
Just to describe who we are for anybody who is in the audience or who
Online,
benefit
yeah.
online from it.
Audience. Okay,
Yeah.
so,
Sorry.
and this is certainly.
And this is the leave as you want, because
Yes.
we are not offended.
So
We will
yes,
talk-
as you said, the event is officially over. Thank you. But okay.
I know we're
And-
doing this a little backwards. We should have done this at the beginning.
Yes.
Right.
I'm so sorry. I was so
But-
nervous. I totally
Yeah.
forgot.
So, but this is
And you
what
guys
we
didn't
do.
tell me this was one of the announcements I was supposed to
Yeah.
make.
Right, it's our fault.
I
yeah.
said, what announcements should I make?
I know, and we forgot.
No,
but
no.
This is what we do.
So my name is Chris. I am wearing a black suit. I have a gray shirt on, and I am a middle-aged man with gray hair.
All right, and I am to Chris's right, and I'm a middle-aged white woman with brown, I did have a little red in it, pulled to the side, wearing a red, black, and white dress so that I'm color coordinated with Chris and Oakley.
Yes, that's right.
Can I go?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can go.
I'm Oakley Thiele. I am a white female with short brown hair. I am wearing a bright red jacket, plaid pants, and I am sitting in a manual wheelchair, which is white. Oh, and I have a service dog named Coco.
I'm Ron. I'm a gay white male in my 60s, and I work here, and I kind of threw this together. As if you couldn't tell, but I'm wearing Yeezys.
And I'm Lisa. I'm a middle-aged white woman with light-colored hair that's short, and I'm wearing a black dress and black boots. And I will say, in terms of our clothing choices, so what we're performing here is image description, which is a part of the access measures that we incorporate into DisArt events and DisArt practices. And you'll find that online on the social feed, and you'll also find that in the audio tour, and sort of throughout the presence of the exhibition in our satellite locations as well. So that's part of what we're offering here. And image description is an important part of access, not just for people who do not see, but also for other people who have varying access requirements. You were asking about, could we identify our disabilities? And that's not something that DisArt typically does. Do you want to talk about why that is, or should we just leave that there?
I mean, I think when people enter public spaces, especially disabled people, there's an assumption that, and this is not about your question, sir, but there's an assumption that people deserve my story in terms of my own medical history, and that's not right. That's not something that is sustainable for our community, because the weight of having to explain who we are all the time is a terrible weight. And so that's something that we do. But interpersonally, we talk, of course, right, to all of our friends. So we'd love to talk to you more. So let's wrap this up.
Yeah, absolutely. So the only other thing I'll say, you were asking about, I think, Oakley's T-shirt. So My Dearest Friends T-shirts are available online. I think you'll find them if you go to the My Dearest Friends website. Is that correct? There'll be a link. The T-shirts are great. There's also mugs and masks and other merch. And there's some examples in the gift shop. Great. And you can buy other things in the gift shop, including a beautiful catalog. So so please check out all of that there. So again, thank you so much. And will the program be online?
I think Facebook Live you can replay.
Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Page. And kind of begging them to, remember this pandemic.
Back at the desk, a drawing of a house and a beaming sun. She fills the sun with black charcoal, adds the finished drawing to a stack. Back at the wall, the old wooden ladder near the corner.
I'm tired of our lives being considered as expendable.
A fluffy shepherd dog joins Oakley. She commands the dog to sit, climbs the ladder, nails another picture in the array. Drawing again, a person in striped trousers and a mask who stands beside their oxygen tank.
We're groundbreakers. We're groundbreakers, right? Because I really think that this is going to change, like working remotely is going to change the way everybody does work, right? And I think maybe I'm hoping that it will further naturalize or regularize disabled people working in different ways, right?
Now, Oakley squats to add a picture near the bottom. The dog crowds between her and the ladder, wagging its giant tail. Now Oakley kneels, the dog leans in for a hug.
We've had to be creative out of necessity, right? And it's just the larger population has that same necessity thrust upon it now. So it's taking on a whole new significance because the larger population is dealing with it now.
Oakley presses her forehead to the top of the dog's head. She now sketches a dog in a vest on a blank page on the wall.
My dearest friends, I'm not sorry that I'm disabled, and I don't want anyone else to feel sorry for me either. If there's anything you should be sorry about, it's systemic discrimination of people with disability. And if you're truly sorry about that, you'll start taking actions to dismantle ableism. I don't need your pity. I need you to learn, embrace, and become more inclusive of me and all other people with disability.
The walls filling with letters and drawings, Oakley commands the dog down. Oakley and the dog snuggle.
My dearest friends, may we be flanked by the protection of each other's care. May we rest. May we hold space for each other in the stillness. May our voices find audience, and may others begin to listen. May we scream until the world comes to equally value our lives, full of sage experience and pre-existing conditions.
Oakley flops backward. The dog sneaks a kiss. Laughing, Oakley twists and scrambles up. She speaks to the dog, whose ears perk.
But I do want people to open their eyes and realize that what they're experiencing right now is something that is temporary for them. And it has been rather permanent for many of us. And I hope that they understand it better and they'll do something.
Oakley stacks drawing upon drawing. In the grass and peering up at a starry night sky, someone in a hospital bed, a wheelchair user pointing at the moon, someone walking with a guide dog, a person standing with a walker, the Disart logo.
My dearest friends, we mustn't let this be forgotten, the time the world gained perspective on a small portion of our struggles. We must make sure that this moment goes down in history so that we can build a better world, a more accessible world, a world for everyone, a world for us.
Oakley's handwriting in black on a white screen. Credits in order: Mary Fashik, Oakley Thiele, Nancy Hansen, Jason Climo, Whitney Mashburn, Jane Hash. Oakley Thiele, www.oakleythiele.com. Disart, www.disartnow.org. Dystopia. Special thanks Ford Foundation, Cheryl Green, Kendra Larson. Song licensed through The Music Bed, with Love, cinematic version by Analog Heart. Text on a black screen. In March